Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our next DEY dialogue, Discussions in Defense of Childhood. My name is Denisha Jones, and I am the Executive Director of Defending the Early Years. And today's conversation, I'm joined by an amazing team of early childhood education and care professionals. We've got Magy Youssef, Jacky Howell, Makai Kellogg, and Sabina Zeffler. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's dialogue.
Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for
having us. So great to have you guys here. So we're going to talk a little bit more about why you're here towards the end, but I just wanted to start off with today's conversation about social justice in early childhood. So for many of us, it's a no-brainer, right? Of course, social justice belongs in early childhood, but I think that's not always the case, right? And so I wanted to have today's conversation about, fear that people might have around embracing social justice in early childhood education and care spaces. So let's jump right into it with our first question is, why do you think people are afraid to center social justice in early childhood spaces?
So I work directly with educators and caregivers, with over a variety of capacities. And so just what I've observed over many years is there's a fear of acknowledging internal messages. There's a fear of saying the wrong thing. People are unsure how to respond. And so they prefer avoidance. People don't want to name their privilege. That they think that kids are too young. It's just a lot of thinking anyone outside of themselves that is gaining access means that something is being taken from them. There's just a wide range of the fears. But the biggest thing I think is a misunderstanding of what social justice is. I know everyone has their own definition. But even just in the simplest terms in our field, it's what does it mean to be part of a community? And how do we care for each other? And so our job is to support children as they're learning themselves and they're learning the world around them. And that is going to include things like affirming who they are and noticing differences among, the many, many things that we do.
Yeah, thanks for that, Makai. One of the things you said, which I hear, is this idea of scarcity. If somebody's getting something, then there's not enough for someone else. And I think that's just a huge problem in society, right? But I'd love to hear from Jacky and Magy and Sabina. What else do you think is driving the fear, causing the fear that keeps people thinking that, early childhood is not the space to tackle social justice issues with really young children?
Yes, as a former classroom educator and now somebody who does coaching and professional development, et cetera, there's 3 or 4 things I always hear, even when we bring, these are too little children to bring up such hard things for them to understand. And so they'll say, it's not really appropriate for an early childhood classroom, which I think does relate back to what Makai was saying.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that they often say is they're scared in this particular political climate that, I worked with a school that a parent came in and took every single book out of their classroom that had anything to do with diversity. And teachers were afraid to speak up. They're afraid to say, we want to be able to present these ideas to children. It's really important, but we're going against the families who have their children in the center. Maybe they'll leave us. And so it becomes this complex situation of, it's not just me and my own bias and my own things that I'm confronting, but what about the other people that I'm working with in an early childhood program?
One thing I work directly with the teachers in the school, and so I think what often comes up for them is just relationships with families and understanding where they're coming from. Having those conversations is the beginning, and I think that's often not easy. We're at the beginning of the school year right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, giving that support, having those spaces that are not when children are always around, and trying to create that respectful communication and back and forth of understanding where do we come from. And then trying to help families, learning from them first, I think. And so it's nothing added. It's literally using our community to do this work together. And I think, also that sense of that we're not adding something from outside or talking about issues that children are not connected to, but we're really starting with where they are in their experience, what they acknowledge in their world, what's important to them, what are the problems that are coming up. And if we're doing our work and following children's interests, observing, letting them lead the way, children have a really keen sense from the youngest that Magy worked with, the 18 months, to the 4 and 5-year-olds that we have, of what's fair. And those are the things they're grappling with every day. And so I think taking that fear or understanding that that's where we're starting, and we're building on that as a community. But I think sometimes it's that thing that it's something other that we're adding, instead of understanding that it's coming from who we are here in this community.
I love that so much. And I want to bring Magy in because I know she works specifically with the younger kids, and I've really been thinking about this idea. People say they're too young. So how do you respond to that fear that kids are too young for social justice?
Yeah, I really love this question because I had to kind of learn it myself. And all of you are saying, it takes the work inside first in order to kind of extend it outwards. And one example I can think of is many years ago when Makai kind of introduced Black Lives Matter at school, Week of Action, as adults and teachers and caretakers, even though we were 100% on board, there was some sort of hesitancy. What kind of feedback are we going to get from the parents? What kind of, are they going to pull them out of our classroom? Like certain things like that, especially because the students are not predominantly or dominantly children of color or come from families of color. And so it was really important on how we were going to deliver it. But I would also say, because we didn't have the right information, we needed more information. We needed to kind of do self-reflection. We needed to put the fear aside on what was going to happen, and kind of just model for the children and for the parents that this is a safe space to talk about difficult things like social justice. And it still remains developmentally appropriate for the 18-month-year-olds, for example, to where it comes down to buddy play, taking turns, reading books about empathy and kindness, really praising them and catching them in the moment when they're doing something else for someone else, or a pet or even a plant, just like living things within our community. So you do really see it from that early.
Yeah, I think that's so important too. One of the things that I loved when we first started Black Lives Matter at school, Lelania Garcia, a kindergarten teacher, was like, these are the principles we want in our young children's spaces: empathy, diversity, restorative justice, right? All of the globalism, all of these things, right? And so it was a no-brainer that we would want this, but it was really helping people deal with their fears around it, right? And parents have fears, and I love how I think Jacky said, like, it's very different for these kids to come here to the school and then come home and talk about it, and the parents aren't prepared. I think we need to do a lot better job, right, at that, in bringing the parents in on the conversation so that they're around too. And really addressing that this is what, the children really need, right? And if they're following their lead, like Sabina said, then we're letting them take the lead. We're letting them push forward, and we're letting them letting them tell us what they need so that we can give it to them. But we did jump right into about the fears, but we should step back, like Makai said, and talk about what do we mean when we say social justice in early childhood education and care. So my next question is, for you, what is at the heart of social justice in early childhood education care? What does it mean to you? What is it? What would, if someone said, well, what do you mean by social justice in young children? What would you say? What's your answer to that?
So we laughed because we kind of thought the same thing when we chatted before, where we were like, you got to really see children as human and people and respect them. Like that's the core of it in terms of social justice in early childhood, that they're capable and competent. And how we treat children and how we interact with them is paramount to everything. You want to add on?
Yeah, I was just thinking, one of the challenges I often say to some of the schools I work with is, I want you to take pictures of children doing kind and caring things to other children that don't have anything to do with a prize or a reward. And teachers are often shocked at oh my gosh, look what these kids are really capable of. Look what they're doing. And I said nothing as a teacher. It wasn't a lesson. It wasn't anything but just who children are. And so we talked about, how do we even teach them? If we're teaching them about respect and caring for others that are different than they are, then we better look at the fact we're doing that and I think that that's really something that came up for all of us.
I think another part that I think of that is really hard, and as an adult, and I guess as we were talking about having these conversations with the families, is like holding discomfort and having conversations where I would say, like, I think we're all space holders for the children, and sometimes we push a little bit back on the space to highlight something that's happening, and even if we're just giving a little air to it. So just wow, what happened just now? How did that feel? Look at that. I mean, that's what we're about, that social emotional piece, but drawing attention to, and there's no right or wrong, and kind of work through that discomfort. But I think that's a part of doing this work that I think is the hardest. And I think being in the classroom each day, so many things happen, and we're quickly, like a rubber band. Although we've thought about it, we worked about it, we've thought about it, we reflected, we have new approaches that we're practicing. So I think doing that in community is the key. And so whoever we're working with, and hopefully the families are a part of that, because that's what we do here, we partner with them. Doing that work together is key, because we have to keep being open to being uncomfortable. And I think that's the key, to also model to the children that it's okay to be uncomfortable, not to know. And we can come together and figure this out and go through these difficulties, because we really want to make sure that we're all welcomed and nobody's excluded. So yeah.
I love that. I love that modeling comfortableness, modeling the uncertainty, modeling the need to redo. Like, I love one of the Black Lives Matter school principals, because it's like, when I was talking to little kids, it's kind of like, you know what? I don't like what I don't like how that went. Can we go back? Can we try this again? Can we approach this differently? Right. And that's a big thing to show children. It's okay to reflect back and say, I want to change that. Right. I don't like that interaction we just had. I don't like how it made me feel. Like, let's redo this. And having those opportunities for kids to see that in action is super important, right? Yeah. Magy, what do you think about?
Just the word practice. I think the word practice is really important, because it's a continuum, and we're never ending. Never done with practice.
Never ending. Yeah.
Being curious, and so
No, that's a good point, right? We're constantly evolving, we're constantly learning. It's not like, ooh, check, I'm done. It's like, nope, I might have to come back and use this tool again. I might need more practice. I might need another opportunity to get it right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think especially, sorry, Jacky.
I just add one thought, is that it's so many things that people have started to look at, is so many people start out the beginning of the school year, they're all about me. It's about me, 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 me. And yes, we want children to have this wonderful sense of their own identity, but now more and more people are thinking, well, really, it's a we. It's a we. And it's that sense of we're each of us, all of us together, and each of us as who we are as individuals. And I like seeing that shift, and how important that is in terms of extending it out in some of the ideas around social justice.
Yeah, because it's important that it's not just the individual, but it's the individual in a community, and those two things. And those really do start with young children, right? We can focus on both, but so that one is not superseding the other, I think is super important. Yeah.
Yeah, I love everything that was said. I think especially with the younger group, practice, repetitiveness, those things, and being consistent, providing the tools, not only modeling, but providing the tools for them to advocate not only for themselves, but also for other injustices, right? Whether it be nature or other peers or family members, or just, again, within themselves. I think it's huge, because in the beginning, we do a lot of the modeling where we speak our intention and we let the children know what's going on. And we're really, really verbal in the beginning into explaining everything and making sure that they feel safe in this environment before they even commit to being part of the community. And then we kind of search for their individual talents and kind of use that to boost their confidence, and they take part of the community. So we have helpers in the classroom, we have a feel better person that, like, if they enjoy doing it, then we really push them to kind of do it. And again, it's really age appropriate, so it kind of extends as they get older, and it's really nice to see.
I love that. A feel better person. You know, coming up with classroom jobs is a lot. That's a good one that I hadn't seen before. Like, you can be the feel better person. Yeah, I mean, it's so much that, you know, it seems intuitive if we work with young children that we want to model these things. I think there's some issues around like this whole real world for children. Like, we got to stop coddling. And I'm like, you know, because, you know, you can't get a young child to really accept unfairness, right? Like we said, they have a very strong detector about justice and fairness. And I think the frustrating part for some people is that they won't accept, well, that's just how things are, which we've learned to just accept that as a horrible answer, but the way things are, right? The way the world works. And little children won't accept that, right? And so but you know, well, why don't some people have a place to live? Well, that's just the way things are. And they're like, well, that's not fair, right? And so they're going to keep continuing to challenge that. And I think that that threatens people's right ability to just move forward, right? And so how much do you want to have children in this idealized world where things can and should be better, or how much do you want them to like accept, right, the limitations of the world around them? And I think, you know, I hear people go back and forth about that. We have to prepare them, and I'm like, oh, the real world is there, right? Our job is to show them what is possible in this space that we are in together, right? And how we create this space every day, and what it takes, right, to keep this space going, to keep our environment going, to keep our connections going, so that they can see it's an ongoing work and it's ongoing project. So I think social justice for me is at the heart of that, right? That we tune into the fact that children want everything to be fair, they want everything to be good, and we strive to show them what that takes, what that work looks like, the relationships we have with ourselves and each other, and how we treat each other and how we take care of each other is super important to that. So I'm so glad you guys are here. I really want to dig more into this, and this is just a short conversation, but we are having an amazing conversation coming up next week, October 2nd, at 7 p.m. So if you guys are not familiar with it, Jacky, Makai, Magy, and Sabina co-authored a lovely book called Reflection, Perspective Taking, and Social Justice, Stories of Empathy and Kindness in Early Childhood Classrooms. There it is. And so we're really excited to do a full webinar for an hour and a half next week, where we're going to really dive into this book, really thinking about what does it mean to encourage kindness and empathy in young children. We're going to talk so much about their work. As you can see, most of them, they're all in the same space, working at a Quaker preschool in Washington, D.C., using Quaker values, the stories they work with children, addressing issues around anti-bias and anti-racism in the classroom. We're going to get into so much, and you're going to want to get the book, because we're just going to give you a little bit so that you will get the book and read it. Super excited. DEY's Nancy Carlson Page wrote the foreword for the book. She read it and she loved it. And so we're really excited to have this conversation. So we hope that you will join us. There's still time to register for our webinar. And yeah, I just want to thank Magy and Sabina and Jacky and Makai for joining us today and for having this short conversation. And I look forward to it for next week, so we really dig into this. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.